All right, everybody. So we're on the final stretch. We hope you all are buckled up, enjoying what you're experiencing right now. And we're going to take it to the next level because next up, we have our DeFi panel called The Power of DeFi for Black People Globally. And to lead us off, we have Donald Hawkins, CEO of First Boulevard. And we can't wait to hear what you all have to say. Thank you so much for having us.
Akin, thank you so much, and CBEE team for all making this happen. I am pumped. As you all can see, we have an incredible lineup. Many of you all I've come to know, and for those of you that I don't know, I've looked you up. Cannot wait to learn more from you all today. The concept around this global connectivity of our people is something that has been talked about for many generations, but for the first time, I feel DeFi is really giving us the ability to make those things happen. So before we dig into it, let's do just a quick round of intros. Let's hear these elevator pitches. So let's start off with Professor Tonya. Kick us off.
Hi, Donald. Thank you so much. Thanks to the Chamber. Thanks to CBE. I am a professor of law at Penn State Dickinson Law School. I'm the chair of the Maker Foundation, which is part of the MakerDAO community, and bootstrap the MakerDAO toward full decentralization. I'm the owner of the Advantage Evans Academy and the creator of From Cash to Crypto and the NFT Law Guide for creatives, whom I adore, and collectors. And thank you for having me.
Awesome. This next person that I'm going to punt it to, I always go to their website to make me feel very smart about cryptocurrency. Somebody said, Donald, show me what is cryptocurrency. Like, let me show you my dashboard. I just go to Sawyerr, right, and make sure they see all the crazy things going on. So, Robbie, fill us in.
I appreciate you. My name is Robbie Greensfield, CEO of Emerging Impact, and was also the co-founder of Blockchain for Social Impact Coalition, was the first social sector consortium for blockchain kind of usage, and the co-founder of Consensus Social Impact, which was the social sector practice of consensus. And I'll keep it there because we got other amazing people to focus on.
Awesome. Fancy. Fill us in.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to see so many of the people that I love and respect and are doing tremendous work in the industry. My name is Lisa Fancyfied Francoeur, Francoeur for my Haitians out there. I am the co-founder of CryptoTutors, where we are simplifying cryptocurrency and blockchain through e-learning, one-on-one tutoring, and edutainment that includes a YouTube-produced show called The Crypto Couch, where we host subject matter experts, primarily Black, brown, and female faces that are leading us into the future. We are humanizing crypto and blockchain by providing a platform for these juggernauts in the industry to be heard, including Tonya. Donald, we got to get you on the couch soon. And, you know, with the edutainment component, another thing I'll say is that crypto for the culture is part and parcel to why we do what we do. We recognize that crypto is presenting one of the greatest redistributions of wealth in human history. And we want to make sure that we're speaking to our people in a language that lends themselves to transform knowledge into wealth. That's Fancyfied certified. I'll leave it there.
Fancyfied, I really want you to work on your passion. Like we gotta judge it up a bit. Like it's,
we gotta amp it up. We gotta amp it up. You know, Fancyfied be on 100,000.
That's it. Ron, I just spoke you up and said the wrong R name. I was just telling people how smart I feel, you know, when people in my family want to learn about cryptocurrency and I want to really blow them away. I just take them to y'all's research website, fill the people in on what you all are building.
Yeah, much appreciated. Yeah, so I'm a researcher at Sawyerr, kind of like a data analytics platform that also does research. And I cover kind of DeFi, stablecoins, and then Bitcoin, Ethereum, because I mean, it's hard to not, you know, cover those assets. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Awesome, thank you. And for those of us looking to raise capital, I know we had a couple of people on the previous session. Super excited for you all to get to know my guy Akin, like your pre-seed investor. That's a big deal. A lot of us, when we raise capital, need to find investors that look for traction, or we have to have some type of a product in market. But you go early, man. Fill the people in on what you're building.
Yeah, so Akin Sawyerr, my primary focus actually is more as an operator. So I'm pretty active in a number of DAOs within the DeFi space that are actually building new financial products. And I also spend time as an angel investor through Feleman, which is, as you said, a pre-seed investor. And so leveraging a lot of the experience and contacts I have in the space, I'm also looking to invest in kind of really early stage projects that need not just capital, but also just, advice and a sense of, the path to take to build and scale these new networks.
Amazing. So as you all can see, we are packed with a lot of knowledge and a lot of very diverse backgrounds, which is what makes us special. But this topic is critically important to our communities worldwide. I had a conversation yesterday on a panel where we talked about how difficult it is for people of color globally. This big blue rock we live on, but yet everywhere we seem to struggle. And when you think about fair access to wealth building, lending, credit, across the board, there's always some sinister struggle that we go through. But for the first time, we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Professor Tonya, I'd love to just start off with you. Like, how do you feel we can bridge that gap as a community with DeFi and other methods to kind of marry with it?
Well, it's a really important question, and I'm as enthusiastic and hopeful as you are in this moment when we think of all of the systemic issues that have the pernicious impact that it has had on our community. And we're talking at the same time with the 100th anniversary of Juneteenth. I know the Hamilton Project recently came out with a comprehensive evaluation of wealth in the United States. Clearly shows what we already know about the staggering racial disparities and generational wealth accumulation. For example, in 2016, the net worth of a typical white family was $171,000. It's 10 times greater than that of a Black family. And when people ask Black people why that is and why you can't pull yourselves up from the bootstraps, think of the billions of dollars that we have lost as a result of that. Think of the fact that when you start over again in one generation, you're not really starting over. You're so far behind by hundreds of years. So fast forward to your question, the idea of disintermediating the financial intermediaries that have kept us out and participating on an equal playing field, let alone ahead. That's why I'm so excited about DeFi and leveraging assets that don't require the participation of others for us to participate.
You make a good point. One of the things that makes DeFi so special is it takes away the anxiety that we have, that complication that we have when it comes to money, and to look at the generations that we have now and other statistics that are just horrible. I mean, the one thing that always I like to bring up is that by 2053, the net median income of Black families in the US will fall to zero. And to be honest with you expand that to global markets with the way inflation's currently working, I wouldn't be surprised that's a similar trend and maybe even faster in other markets. But that anxiety of having access to the financial institutions and the industry as a whole, but now through DeFi, not having to worry as much about color and also making things a lot more competitive where it's not just based on local community banks in my area. I can get money and get funding from anywhere. I mean, so many interesting things we can do. On that educational front, Fancyfied, I'd love to now kind of pivot to you because DeFi is a very modern approach, and the general market is still not very aware of it. I mean, another statistic before I pass it over, this came out maybe about a month and a half ago. 30% of the Black community now owns cryptocurrency. Blows my mind. My mom knows what buying on the dip is, right? That's a whole nother conversation. But when you think about traditional wealth building opportunities, as far as like stocks, ETFs, we only hold 1.6% of those versus 91.6% of white America holding stocks. So that education piece is going to be critically important for us to actually put DeFi to work. So Fancy, fill us in, like, how do you feel we can use education as a way to get the consumers up to speed?
Well, first and foremost, I think that, the systemically racist practices that have inhibited our people domestically and globally from participating in wealth generation has been, quite intentional. And I think that with the opportunities presented in crypto, particularly within the DeFi space, which coincidentally you're talking about a $200 billion in value locked in DeFi. They're projecting by the end of this year, there's about $40 billion locked in DeFi. DeFi represents about 8% of the total market cap of crypto. And, when you're putting things in that type of context, it's super important that we recognize that this is an opportunity, but it is also extremely necessary to ensure that we have the level of sophistication required to navigate the space. And so one thing I'll say that at CryptoTutors, we are doing to ensure that our folks have the sophistication and the proficiency to make wise and sound investment decisions. We're not advisors, we're educators, is that we've actually produced an e-learning course which walks folks through the process of what is crypto, what is blockchain, cryptography, how do you procure crypto? What is the most seamless process? We talk about onboarding ramps like Cash App, for instance, because we recognize that the world at large is moving to a mobile first environment. And so we want to make sure that we're not just concentrating on the domestic market, but we're also recognizing that globally, we're helping folks prepare themselves for navigating the landscape. And so with that, buying Bitcoin, but ultimately shielding our folks from the volatility associated with these extremely volatile assets by introducing them to stablecoin. A stablecoin in particular that we refer to is USDN, which generates 10 to 15% interest through a process called staking. And so I know some of the other panelists have education and curriculum that they're administering, including Professor Tonya Evans. But I say all of that to say we're giving this education for free. We've brokered corporate partnerships with entities that recognize that this is an opportunity to put their money where their mouth is, investing in communities that the Black community here in the US, for example, has over $1 trillion in buying power. Imagine if we were able to convert some of that buying power into investment power, what the implications would be. So this is the conversation that we are not only spearheading and contributing to, but we want to make sure that we are setting our folks up for success. So go to CryptoTutors.com, access the free e-learning course, and continue to keep tabs on the industry leaders that you see speaking on this panel, follow their journeys, and remember, knowledge is designed to be transformed into wealth when you're playing in the DeFi space.
Somebody want to say amen?
Holla.
Holla.
Amen.
I love it. So Ryan, now I want to pivot over to you, right? So we see a lot of interesting things going on right now in the crypto market. So Black America just recently went in heavy on cryptocurrency because we have more connectivity, more density within our community of people who flipped $100 into 1,000 because they made a bet on Doge, right? And we feel that is building wealth. But the research behind it is so critically important because as we see these dips now, guess who's losing their money? It's us, because we haven't been taught about the volatility of cryptocurrency or holding on to it as a long-term investment versus just a way to flip cash. So how do you feel your company can play a role in also helping to educate people and to navigate kind of where we're headed?
Yes, I think we can help along two dimensions. One is along kind of like an educational dimension. And that's really teaching people how to evaluate different crypto assets as well as different sectors of DeFi or even just crypto at large. So that's providing with like the framework for how to think about, why these projects matter or why they're valuable, what problems are they solving, providing them with the data and metrics to properly analyze these projects. So which projects are succeeding, which ones are failing. And then with all this data and kind of like this framework, so then now you can actually go and make decisions on what is a good investment and what is not a good investment. So that's like kind of step one, is like providing people the tools so that they can be successful rather than just throwing darts at a wall and then getting lucky when something goes up. The second one, and I think this is something that Sawyerr does particularly well, is educating around kind of like the why DeFi matters part of it. Because I think one thing that's always difficult when I think up front when we get to this industry is, okay, like we talk about all this, revolutionary technology and like banking the unbanked and all these high level themes, but it doesn't always resonate with people's everyday lives. Like, why does it actually matter for people? So really like framing around, on the consumer side, what does this enable them to do, right? Like, why does it matter? And showing them that, okay, well, now you have, anyone in the world with internet connection that can now access financial services, right? That are open and transparent, and why that matters. And then on the flip side, for people not just consume these products, but who actually want to build, also showing that, hey, well, now anyone in the world can now create financial services and provision them. So not just like some trusted entities, not just some people in ivory towers or people who have certain licenses. Now it's kind of like leveling the playing field so that there's economic opportunity for everyone who wants to go and participate. So that's kind of see like Masari's role is kind of both, like I said, around educating people to think about these assets from an investment perspective, and then kind of shaping and kind of telling that story about why these things will actually matter for people.
It's an awesome segue to you, Robbie. I mean, so thinking about the underbanked and unbanked populations, a big issue that we struggle with is, one, on the traditional side, lack of financial institutions in their areas. We have 35% fewer here in the US. And then the financial institutions that we do have, we're required to pay 35% more to earn a free checking account, right? So understanding the importance of bringing those types of financial technologies into those communities is something that you're tackling. How are you and your company really trying to help this emerging market?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this really started at my time at Consensus. So I've been in the blockchain space since 2011. And, like many, I got into the cryptocurrency game in day trading early, but, really quickly transitioned to the engineering aspect of it. So what can we build on this? And that materialized in, forming Consensus Social Impact, going on to do a whole bunch of different use cases with UN agencies and major NGOs to see, okay, what actually works in the field. Because, in contrast to popular belief, a lot of the DeFi protocols that are currently out there don't serve people of color, don't serve marginalized communities. User experience for a lot of decentralized applications is still awful, terrible. I mean, at the most you need a computer with an extension. At the least you need an iPhone. And so, how can we tackle a lot of these problems? And the way that this is materialized was us doing the world's first cryptocurrency-based humanitarian aid program with Oxfam in Vanuatu, which is the most disaster-prone island in the world. Majority Black nation when you see the color of these people, and that's true for a lot of Southeast Asia. And what we found was, the flywheel that, starts to exist when you start to introduce digital currencies to emerging markets, particularly in the context of humanitarian aid, is that you can give them tools that on-ramp them into other aspects of financial inclusion, right? So usually if you do a humanitarian aid program, cyclone hits an area or earthquake hits area, they'll give out paper vouchers, right? They'll track it on Excel and email, and they'll just keep on doing that, or they'll give out shirts and they'll give it out to the wrong part of the island, or they'll give out a whole bunch of waters that are never used. And now we have a way not only to ensure that the tools that they're using, right? Digital wallets that work on feature phones, for example, it is possible, or wallets that work on USSD, so you don't have to have data or internet to access simple financial services in terms of transfers and savings. They can use that outside the context of humanitarian aid and outside the context of social protection. And many may be asking, well, how does this relate to, the community, the African-American community? We saw how well COVID stimulus went, and that is a form of social protection, right? Unemployment is another form of social protection. So all of these, programs fall in line with, how we can enable communities, particularly lower socioeconomic communities, in a time of need immediately, but also while minimizing any level of corruption, right? Not giving $10 million to Shake Shack, right? Right. During a pandemic, which did happen. Of course, Shake Shack was one of the ones that gave it back. I think the potential for this, and where I get excited is when we do see Black engineers in particular creating protocols built for marginalized communities, meaning that how can we get around collateral constraints when it comes to decentralized loans, or how can we be creative in terms of using somebody's credit as collateral to give somebody else an under collateralized loan, but also how can we think about microfinance and micro investing more generally, right? I mean, there's protocols that offer synthetic stocks, right? So you can get exposure to Tesla or Google in ways in which you would typically need to go through some form of KYC or be an accredited investor, whichever. How can we create synthetic indices so that, people have exposure to assets that they would never, ever throughout their entire lives have access to? And that's what gets me, motivated, because beyond just transferring money quickly and, and doing this or that, it's the increasing income opportunities from savings, from creating business, from loans, and getting access to
stock that's really going to change people's social mobility. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to come, but I've seen a huge lacking of that in the protocols that exist today.
That's awesome. So Keith, that also kind of speaks to your mission, right? So you build and you also invest in crypto assets, and also you focus on emerging markets too. How are you attacking this issue and also providing a pathway for people to get access to it?
Yeah, so I think one thing that's really important to sort of highlight is the fact that I think decentralized networks and DeFi give us the opportunity to rethink what financial services are and how to structure them. And I think oftentimes people look at emerging markets as places where you go to teach people certain things rather than places you go to learn. And if you look at lots of emerging markets, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa as an example, investing is a social activity, right? So people have financial services and they leverage savings groups, right? They're called different things in different countries, but there are pretty sophisticated credit systems that are on the ground that are built based on relationship. And oftentimes credit is looked at in terms of, families and networks and groups of farmers. And they're not just financial systems, they're also systems through which people learn and share information, right? If we're investing together as in a group in the same vocation, it's incumbent on us to share information across the group because we're all invested in each other. And when you look at financial services more from a modern or Western view, it's always centered around the individual, an individual and their credit score, and how do you kind of come up with a number which is not perfect and not very portable. And so I think part of the opportunity I see is for a lot of structures within these emerging markets to now come on chain, because a lot of the behaviors we see actually in DeFi are not that different from how a lot of people that are considered unbanked actually transact, right? It's a lot about the groups getting together. It's a lot about information exchange. And a lot of those characteristics are in DeFi networks. So I think the opportunity now is to bring those social activities that many people in emerging markets find familiar, and then bringing that and modernizing it, right? Bringing that on chain, bringing that through leveraging technology that extends now like a small group within a village or a town in Africa to now be in a global marketplace where they can now magnify their ability to access finance and continue the activities they've been doing. So I think there's a huge opportunity to kind of rethink finance as a whole, rethink how we determine credit, rethink how we organize as people, right? I think it was said earlier on that, part of the challenge we've had as Black people globally, to be very honest, is a fracturing within our communities, right? So can we use and leverage DeFi as a way to come together, right? And look beyond borders, right? There's no reason why African Americans shouldn't be investing in Africa and vice versa, right? And a lot of the tools are in place, a lot of the networks are being formed. And, it's funny, I tell people, just as we see, like you see certain precursors where, for example, with music and hip hop and entertainment, you're seeing sort of a coming together of Black people across the world, right? You're seeing collaborations between African artists and, American producers, for example, right? I think some of those things will start showing up in DeFi, where people start beginning to realize that the gaps between us are kind of narrowing, and the ability now to access each other and exchange information and then build things that are socially relevant for our communities is there and available. And that's what makes me the most excited, because I think that's where innovation is going to come out of. And I think we'll see better structures in place that bring that community together, but also puts us at the seat or at the head of the table, right? Because I think there's just certain inherent cultural norms within Black communities across the world that deserve now to sort of come to the fore, because there's a lot of value in how we interact and how we take care of each other and kind of the social systems that are inherent to a lot of Black people across the world. So that for me is what kind of makes me really excited. How do we now bring these social norms into financial services, into DeFi, and begin to now innovate and potentially then spread it across the world to traditional systems that I think are not ideal going forward.
I love that. Let's keep that good vibe going. Let's end this thing on a high note. I would love to know from the rest of you, what excites you the most about our future and what DeFi can do for our community. Start with you, Professor Tonya.
I'm sensing a fundamental shift in our collective mindset. I sense an urgency, a readiness. Probably the accelerant was the pandemic. and also the racial and social injustice that has continued to bubble to the surface. We are not new to this, but certainly true to this. And I think our people have drawn a collective line in the sand that we're not going back, we're going forward, and to leverage existing technologies to do that is really exciting. I wrote an article earlier this year on Medium about how cypherpunk principles actually really and interestingly align with Kwanzaa principles, for example. It kind of leverages off of what Akin just said about the role of Susu and relationship and community and trust. To do that on our own terms, I'm really excited about that in the DeFi community.
The world ain't ready for that one, Professor Tonya, but man, if we can make that happen, if we could make that happen, how special that would be. Robbie, how about you? What excites you?
Yeah, and so two things. One, just onboarding the next billion, people of color, like changing, their social mobility, right? Bringing them into the middle class using DeFi. I truly think that can happen over the next 20 years, right? If the right protocols are made. I really do believe that. And the second thing, less in emerging markets, but, looking at how middle to higher income, Black people really contribute toward global culture is seeing that translate into wealth. I want to see more Black billionaires, right? We have too much contribution to global culture for the wealth that we currently have, particularly African Americans. But to your point, Africans are a huge part in the origin story of that as well. And I think a lot of, what we see in NFTs and, things like that can do a lot of good. Also, in terms of just Black content creation, so we have a few things with A16Z bubbling up around that we might drop a little bit later. But yeah.
No better time than the present, Robbie. Just
I can't
if
drop
you're
them
feeling
now.
froggy, brother. If you're feeling froggy. All right, Fancyfied, what about you? What excites you?
I have a vision of, and I spoke to you about this as well, Donald, and that is the Afro Capital Exchange. I think that there's a multitude of forms of capital. There's cultural capital, there's political capital, there's relationship capital, there's venture capital. And with the various forms of capital, imagine a world where the Africans and diasporans were able to exchange that capital. And, when we talk about the next 100 years and we talk about transgenerational wealth and we talk about dynasty building, fundamentally, it speaks to exactly what the vision for the Afro Capital Exchange is. I think that DeFi presents an opportunity for that vision to be realized. And I challenge each of us to start thinking about the schematics to make this idea a reality. And I'm gonna be talking to all of you guys about what that could look like. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to continuing to build.
Amazing. And Ryan, round us out. What excites you?
Yeah, I think what excites me the most is just leveling the playing field. And what I mean by that is, I think there's two things. One is, I think when we start to democratize financial services, that can say, am I still gone?
You're
okay,
good now.
I think I cut out
Go
for a little bit. Yeah. So to me, it's like about the democratization of financial services and a potential cultural shift in how I think particularly people of color can think about financial services, something that is not kind of like unattainable or inaccessible, but it's something that is accessible and something that is, they can be a part of and participate in. And that's not just even from the consumer side. I think that's also from the creator side. So just like how the internet enabled a bunch of Black creatives to go in, basically change the world through their content, I'd be really interested in seeing, is it possible? And I think it is, if Black people can also start participating in creating and providing these financial services as well, and actually participating in the wealth creation process, not just being users of this stuff. Like that to me would be the most exciting thing about DeFi, especially when we sit within this backdrop of, even just at large, declining trust in institutions, but particularly for people in our community where institutions have never worked for us, being able to not just use institutions that are more fair and open, but actually be able to kind of govern and be a part of these institutions as well. I think that's, to me, is like the most exciting thing about this industry.
That's awesome. I'm just so excited to be a part of this conversation. Big thank you to the Chamber for making this happen. And also our partners at CBEE too. I could talk with you all for hours. I'd love to see this screen filled up with more and more people too. So thank you all for listening. Panelists, appreciate you. Akin, over to you.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, everybody. This was a phenomenal kickstart to the next 100 years of wonderful impact by the leaders that you all have seen today. It is an honor to be a leader of this amazing community, Crypto for Black Economic Empowerment. And if you want to follow what it is that we are all doing, all of these amazing folks, of course, you can follow the individuals you've seen today, but you can also head over to cbee.xyz, and we will continue to share and distribute some of the amazing works that folks are doing here. And also, if you are excited by some of the potential of the founders and more of the entrepreneurs that we have in our community, I personally recently launched the Audacity Fund, which is very excited and energized to invest in the amazing people in this community and all of the other folks that, frankly, these folks are going to inspire around the world. By seeing these amazing names, more people around the world will say, wow, me too. I can build an amazing company, a focus on DeFi in my country or in my place. We want to invest in those companies, Audacity Fund. So we invite you all to come chat with us. We're over at Audacity.fund. And thank you, everybody. Thank you so much to the Chamber. Thanks to the fam, CBEE fam. You know what we do. We are here for the next 100 years. And if you are watching today, consider yourself a revolutionary. We want to invite you to join us. So thank you so much, all. Have a beautiful rest of your day. We're all making history by being present here, and salute to everyone. Take care.